Hi, hello, and welcome. Today we'll be talking about the game Felvidek, which is a historical fantasy RPG set in 15th century Slovakia, made with rpgmaker by a small team of 2 people. This video is going to be a complete playthrough, going over the events and story of the game. The game opens with an establishing shot of a castle and its nearby fields. We get our first sight of the protagonist, Pavol, tipping over a wine glass as he sits at a table next to a bottle, and a keep explodes and starts burning in the background. Pavol is startled when he sees the castle burning, since castles are not supposed to be doing that. The first gameplay sequence starts, as Pavol walks to the window and notices that in the distance the castle is aflame. He looks around the room and finds 3 bottles of plum wine and then steps out into the hallway. Pavol runs into Josef, whom he tells about the castle burning. Pavol says that they need to sound the alarm. Josef replies that the old keep won't be missed, even if the Hussites ransacked it. Nothing but misfortune resides there. Still, Josef wants you to go and investigate what happened, and then he points out, by the grace of God, Pavol's stench precedes him. Josef can smell his drinking from across the room. As of late, Pavol has been seeking comfort in the bottom of bottles, ever since his wife left him recently. Pavol waves off Josef's concern, saying that he's just been having a hard time falling asleep recently. To which Josef replies, "Gather your wits. So what, are you going to drown yourself in sorrow over that? I too lost a woman, yet you don't see me drinking dust till dawn like a Tartar." Pavol gives us insight into how he's been feeling by replying that he doesn't care about anything anymore. Josef says that you should go get help from Matej, the priest. Matej will be able to put Pavol right with his endless prayers. Before sending you off, Josef suggests you play a round of Pavekso, a new game that has recently arrived into town. Pavol turns Josef down and says that he'd rather seek the comfort of the priest. Ending the conversation with Josef, Pavol walks down the hall to talk to the priest, finding him down the hall in the chapel, which is marked by a cross over the doorway. Pavol opens the conversation by saying, "Praise be Jesus, are you the sanctimonious one?" Matej, the recently arrived priest, replies, "Praise be, brother, why do you bother my contemplations?" Pavol replies that his lord sent him, that he's trying to figure out how to manage this breakup. Matej says a bunch of religious stuff that sounds very intelligent, and then tells Pavol to recite the Lord's prayers 10 times. Pavol sarcastically replies that he suddenly feels far better and he's overcome the sadness of his wife leaving him. He tells the priest that clearly in his celibacy, he's learned very well how to handle relationships and marriage. Sarcasm aside, Pavol tells Matej to join him to go investigate the fire at the castle. Matej initially doesn't want to go and goes talk to their lord to lodge his complaint. Shortly after, Matej returns. He reports that their liege lord told him to shut up and go with Pavol and to stop complaining. After that, the monk Matej joins Pavol on his journey. Together, Pavol and Matej step outside into the castle's courtyard and take a deep breath of the fresh Central European air. Before there was increased CO2 concentrations in it, our 2 protagonists stop by the armory. We meet a damsel that's still mourning the loss of her grandfather, who was murdered by the invading Hussites. The Hussites were a Czech proto-Protestant Christian movement that followed the teachings of reformer Jan Hus in the 15th century, a part of the Bohemian Reformation, from Wikipedia. Speaking to the armorer says that if it weren't for the fact that Pavol fought against the Turks at the Battle of Kosovo, he wouldn't be able to stand his presence even for a moment. The Battle of Kosovo was particularly bloody and brutal, and would have widespread consequences on the region. It's implied that Pavol is still trying to get over the things that he saw that day. The armorer tells us that we smell like a polecat, and we're making his eyes sting, and he asks us to go away. On his way out, Pavol stops at the herbalist to pick up some fresh healing herbs. Matej and Pavol stop at the well on their way out. Pavol decides to cast a coin into the well for good luck. As a result, he has 1 coin less. Our intrepid pair, a priest and a knight, make their way through the castle gate and into the countryside. On their way out, they meet someone called Dusi, who's trying to find someone called Ferry, who's recently gone missing. Just outside of the gate, our medieval duo is ambushed by Hussites, and we have the first combat encounter that functions like a tutorial to the game's battle mechanics. But more importantly, it's the first time we're introduced to the original soundtrack, performed by Marcel Godot's Holy Crab. This battle melody is gonna get stuck in your head. Here we see the game's battle sequence along with the awesome art style. While the fights in this game aren't easy, the mechanics will be well known to you, with your tried and true turn-based combat that we see a lot in RPGs. Attack, guard, use abilities, stun, inflict status effects, use healing and revive potions, and all the usual good stuff. What I did think was pretty cool and unique was the first-person point of view for all the attack animations. After a few back and forths, we finish the fight and continue on to the burnt castle. But not before collecting their ears as trophies, because they were bad listeners. Pavol and Matej continue their trek north, and before long, they've arrived at the incinerated edifice. Inspecting the building, the central support structure has burnt and collapsed, caving in the ceiling in the central part of the keep. The man of the sword and the man of the faith find a burnt body that appears to have perished due to smoke inhalation. Inspecting the body, our protagonist seems surprised that this man appears to be Turkish from the Ottoman Empire. Matej describes at length the sweet aroma in the air, comparing it to the ecstasy of Saint Teresa, whatever that means. The point is, they smell something in the air that they don't recognize. Something on the floor catches Pavol's attention. He picks up and inspects this weird aromatic seed. Matej quickly advises caution, saying that it might be poisonous. Pavol suggests that they show the seed to their liege lord, since he's better versed in Oriental flora. Before heading back and reporting all this to their liege lord, Matej and Pavol inspect this circular metallic contraption that appears to be a sphere over a fire pit. They investigate it, but they're unable to determine its purpose. Matej points out that this contraption is where the sweet aroma is coming from. Pavol and Matej make their way back to the castle, but they're ambushed, leaving the burnt fortification. They hear armed bandits talking that they need to clear this place to make sure no one finds out about it. The holy man and the soldier are ambushed by two spear-wielding cultists, but they're not very skilled with the spears and they aren't wearing armor, so it's a short fight. The talkative two report back to Josef to let him know everything that they've discovered. Specifically, the burnt Turk and the curious musical instrument that they thought was conjured up from the infernal depths of hell. Pavol suggests that given everything that's going on, if it wouldn't be wise to summon Adam of Kassau. Adam of Kassau was a powerful lord that was well trained in warfare. Josef agrees, saying that Adam is a well-accomplished inquisitor, and they could use his help given the recent reports of Hussites, Turks, and cultists. Adam has an established record of catching miscreants in Hungary. Josef hands Pavol a letter addressed to Adam, and Josef asks Pavol to deliver the letter to Knight Jansi at the gate so that Jansi may write out and deliver it to Adam. Pavol also shows Josef the odd seed found at the burnt fort. Josef mentions that he's heard about these aromatic seeds that have been imported from Persia. Pavol heads to the gate to deliver the letter to the courier, and encounters Paula, his ex-wife. As soon as Pavol sees her, he begs her to come back home, and he asks if he should be begging on his knees. Paula, his ex-wife, says that he should, and as he approaches her, she slaps him as soon as she can reach him. And she tells him that he's still drunk. She can probably still smell the alcohol he was drinking just a few hours ago. And then she tells him to get lost. Paula then leaves. Matej and Pavol look around and they wonder to themselves, where is Knight Jansi that they were supposed to meet at the gate? They are surprised to hear a sound coming from the nearby outhouse. Jansi explains that the fair maiden had given him some wine that was so tart that it just rushed through him, and told him to meet her again in the evening. Matej points out how suspicious it was to find Paula, Pavol's ex-wife, then and there at the gate at just the right time. Pavol suggests that they follow Paula and Jansi when they meet back up. Matej says that they have to ascertain what vile purpose Paula harbors. and how it's interlinked with the dark beverage she had Jancy drink. Matej suggests that the three of them go back and update their liege lord about Paula and the dark aromatic beverage that she fed to Jancy. Jancy explains that he can't leave the outhouse right now. He's in no shape to be talking to his lord. He's still trembling and having cold sweats. But if Muhammad won't go to the mountain will come to Muhammad. Coincidentally, Josef just happens to be walking by at that point. Josef asks Jancy how he's feeling. Jancy says that he's alive, but his belly swells as if 100 worms did wriggle within. But he feels a bit better now, after the spoiled wine had done its job on him. Josef replies that Jancy needs to be feeling better by the evening. Josef admits that there's something weird going on. Ferry vanished without a trace. He'll be sending someone else in Jancy's place to deliver the request for aid to Adam. Josef, Matej, and Pavol, the three that aren't pooping themselves, collect some medicinal herbs to give to Jancy, which make him feel better enough to start moving around. The four of them hatch a plan. When Paula returns, Jancy is to discreetly inquire of her condition and what she's up to. Also, Jancy's to ask her about the wine that made him sick. Josef says that Jancy will be followed and they'll keep an eye on him. Josef suspects that Paula is in cahoots with some band of miscreants. Josef also tells Jancy to attach a pierced bag of ash to his foot. In case they lose track of him, they can follow the trail of ashes. Josef says that he calls it his medieval GPS. Time passes and evening comes. Jancy and Paula meet up just like they had planned, and Jancy walks off, leaving a trail of ash from the bag tied to his ankle. Our hidden trio of heroes start following Jancy's trail to see where Paula was leading him to. Following the trail of ash, the three are eventually led to the cellar, where they find that the trail ends at a wall. Matej and Pavol both jump to conclusions and think that it's some sort of sorcery. Josef turns to Pistik, who's been sitting here all day, and asks him if he's seen anything. Pistik tells them that he saw Jancy and a maiden go through a secret passage in the wall right next to where he was sitting. Matej knocks on the wall and notices that it sounds hollow. Giving it a push reveals a secret passageway. Josef asks Pistik why didn't he tell anybody about the secret passage. Pistik replies he thought that they were there on the Lord's orders. It's been a month since he's been hearing digging in the secret passageway. Following the secret passage, the trio comes upon an opening where they see Jancy and Paula. Pavol flies into a rage when he thinks that he sees Jancy and Paula embracing. Pavol exclaims that he shall render her asunder like a serpent. Against all wisdom, Pavol starts running at Jancy and Paula, revealing their presence, yelling out accusations and names at Paula. But the way that Paula reacts makes it seem like she was expecting them. And then suddenly, multiple cultists materialize from the tree line. One of the cultists, that looks remarkably like Steve Harvey, says that Paula's allegiance now lies with them, and that Pavol shall meet his end in the name of Zurvan. And then the cultists attack our protagonist. After a short scrimmage, Josef tells Pavol that he'll hang him from the neck if he does another stunt like that again. They won't be able to question Paula. She was able to escape in the chaos of the fight. Josef and Pavol both separately make their way back to the castle. Matej is going to take this opportunity to question Jancy and see if he can get any information out of him. Jancy mentions how Paula told him not to worry when he said that he was feeling sick. She kissed him and told him not to be afraid. Paula told Jancy that she'd be leading him to paradise. Matej then heads back to the castle and they call it a night. Pavol takes to the bottle and falls asleep in his armor. Waking up from his drunken stupor, Pavol discovers that something has crawled through the window of his room. His drinking might have saved his life because he passed out already dressed in his combat armor. Pavol grabs his sword and defends himself from this otherworldly monster that appears to have a reptilian tentacle head. Pavol hacks away at the monster until it goes down and stops moving. Pavol inspects the body and notes that a loathsome entity lies here prostrate. Not prostate, which all men should be having checked out once they hit the age of 40. Pavol finds Josef and tells him to quickly come inside and look at the monstrosity that had climbed through his window. And no, Pavol wasn't talking about some wench. The two return to Pavol's room to inspect the body. Josef is shocked and says that this creature must have crawled out of hell itself. But then Matej notices that the monster is wearing Jancy's attire and armor. Is it possible that Jancy transformed into this monstrosity? Josef points out the creature's messed up teeth and says that it must have been Jancy. He wonders if this is how Fairy disappeared. Then Matej makes the connection that this has to be related with the cultist that assaulted them yesterday. Especially since the cultist did call out the name of Zervin, a demon. They must have worked a spell on Jancy. Pavol adds that they must have bewitched his wife as well. She, who was the purest maiden. Though I suspect Pavol might be wrong about that one. Josef orders Pistik to take Jancy's corpse and to preserve the body using the code of the ice. Once Adam arrives, he'll want to inspect the body and dissect it. Josef then asks Matej and Pavol to head into the city and talk to the Burg Master and ask him if he knew anything about the weird happenings that have been going on. And more so, given the reports of disappearances in the area. Following orders, Matej and Pavol head to the village. Matej and Pavol see a short, odd man hop off in a brown robe. Speaking to one of the nearby villagers, they learn that the village is having a very hard time, and the villagers are starting to doubt if the Burg Master even cares, given his inaction. The villager says that they need help. Half of the children have recently disappeared, oddly fleeing the village as if they were enchanted. The villagers are at a loss to what to do. They're thinking about banding together to fight the cultists with pitchforks. Speaking to another villager, they learn about kawa, or coffee, these new beans from the south that has become the rage among the village folk. The villager mentions that there's a Turk nearby that incessantly imbibes it, and that this person speaks in rhymes. Wrapping up the conversation with the villagers, Pavol heads to speak with the Burg Master. But before initiating the conversation, Pavol goes to pet the dog. The game gives us two options, yes and yes. This is the correct way to approach having a puppy in a video game. Who would say that they don't want to pet the dog? Pavol says, "What a nice, kind dog." After that, Pavol initiates a conversation with the Burg Master, introducing himself and saying that they bring tidings from the Lord. Pavol wisely doesn't make any comments about the Burg Master's big poofy hat. Pavol catches the Burg Master up on everything that's happened recently. The Burg Master replies that he had noticed some weird going-ons, but he didn't think it was anything quite so nefarious. The Burg Master reports that the peasants had told him that they heard weird sounds in the area around the castle that burnt down, and that they've also seen weird beasts in the forest at night. The Burg Master tells Pavol that they should speak with the priest and the Jewish man, since both of them have webs of knowledge that reach deep into the village. Wrapping up the conversation, Pavol and Matej step outside. Exiting the Burg Master's house, Matej points out that he thinks that the Burg Master is holding back, that he's not telling them everything that he knows. Maybe he's been taking bribes from the cultist. Entering a nearby house, Pavol and Matej find someone in a robe hunched over digging through a pile of stuff. Could this be someone involved with the cultist? They try to apprehend the thief, but are only able to grab the hood off of the head. But then the thief calls for help, and Matej and Pavol are ambushed and knocked out. They wake up and find themselves in their underwear. All their clothing is gone, and Pavol has a massive headache. The priest is livid when he finds out what happened. They decide to return to the Burg Master. They still had the thief's hood, so maybe they could use the Burg Master's dog to catch the scent and hunt down the thieves and get their clothes back. They return to the Burg Master, and are able to get him to lend them his dog in order to hunt down the thieves. The Burg Master says that he's a very generous soul, He will lend them his hound if they also track down his wife's stolen necklace, which is worth more than the entire value of the house. In the forest, approaching a wood workshop, the hound catches the scent. Getting closer, the dog takes him to a tunnel leading underground. They notice that the floor is sagging here, and removing the planks reveals a passage underground. Following the tunnel, they find the thief that stole their clothes. But the thieves don't take kindly to having these two intrude in their lair. So the thieves attack Matej and Pavol. Outnumbering Pavol and Matej 2-1, the thieves are very quickly able to subdue them. The thief asks Pavol if he has any last request. Pavol replies that he wants strawberries. As the thieves are getting ready to execute the intruders, a group of cultists make an appearance. It turns out that the thieves and the cultists were not working together. Working together, and through the power of friendship, the thief, the priest, and the knight are able to defeat the cultist. After the fight, the thief returns to Pavol and Matej their belongings and clothes. Matej asks the thief if she knows anything about the location of the Burg Master's wife's necklace. The thief says that Kajo stole it and then headed north out of the village. Pavol lets the thief go, telling her to leave and vanish, and that they should never cross paths again. Before leaving, they ask Ida, the thief, how is it that they had a beast among their number? Ida says that it was Desi. A damsel poisoned him in the village and made him into a beast by feeding him a dark aromatic beverage. Successfully, Matej and Pavol return to the village to return the dog to the Burg Master. They report to the Burg Master that they've done away with the band of thieves, and then ask the Burg Master if he has set the cultists after them. The Burg Master defends himself, saying that he had no involvement with the cultist. The Burg Master asks about the necklace, but Pavol says that they haven't found it yet, but they have the location. Having returned the hound, Pavol and Matej set off to talk to the priest and the Jewish man. At the church, they speak to an old nun who's very happy to see Matej approach. She mentions that she can finally see a priest. She's been waiting for the regular priest of this church for 3 days, but he hasn't made an appearance. He doesn't spend much time there. And the old lady has been trying to find someone to confess to. Matej takes the old lady's confession and finds out that the priest likes to hang out at the brothel. Matej and Pavol are dealing with a horny priest situation. Our two protagonists head to the south of the village where the brothel lies. Matej is initially reluctant to enter the brothel, but Pavol tells him to consider that we are going after a priest, so it's like attending mass. Entering the brothel, they spot the obvious priest. Matej approaches the priest and scolds him for hanging out at a brothel, asking if the priest had forgotten his vows to the church. The priest asks why he's being so rudely interrupted in his solitude when he likes to have his cup of coffee after some carnal indulgence. The priest defends himself, saying, "Let my ass be pure. I maintain that so long as no one does any harm, God views the curtailment of one's freedoms as the gravest offense. Didn't God fashion the very behinds he's chasing?" When Matej asks him if he's read the New Testament, the priest confessed that he's only read the Old Testament and that he's remiss in his studies. Matej retorts that the priest is a servo thrall to sin, bound to the feet of women. Bound to a woman, the priest says. "'Tis an experience I have yet to encounter, but maybe someday." Matej asks, why join the church if you don't follow his teachings? "For the coin and the sway bestows," answers the priest. An enraged Matej threatens the priest, and they agree that if they fight and Matej wins, the priest will vacate the church. If Matej loses, the priest gets to stay. The priest says that he needs to take leave to relieve himself. Matej and Pavol wait a while and then realize the priest is not coming back. They inspect the priest's drink and notice that it's kawa, the new drink that seems to be so popular. Matej and Pavol decide to talk to the women to see if they knew anything about the priest. One of the women tells them that the priest always goes to church after meeting with them. The bathmaid also asks if Pavol needs any services from them, that he will be smelling like roses once she's done. Pavol agrees, saying that it's been 3 days since he showered. Matej says that he's going to watch then. So Matej watches as a sex worker services Pavol. so that the entire process proceeds with the utmost propriety. And that's why you always take your priest to the brothel. Pavol and Matej head to the church for their duel with the horny priest, only to discover that the priest has mercenaries. The priest says that if it's not a fair fight, he might be able to win. Pavol asks the priest what was he drinking back at the brothel. The priest replies that's called kawa, or Arabian wine. Pavol shows the priest the seed that they found earlier, and the priest points out that this seed bears some particular etchings. The priest suggests tasting the seeds, but Pavol points out that they might be poisoned, or worse, that they should test it on a rabbit first and see what happens, or some other animal. The priest mentions that it's worth a try. People have vanished. At first he thought it was the Hussites that had slain them, but it turns out that a lot of the youth has joined the cult. The priest tells them that he gets his coffee from Valer, a short man that wears a dark cloak, that lives in a half-timbered house in the village. This must be the same short person that Matej and Pavol spotted when they first entered the village. The priest then takes his leave, while the mercenaries fight Matej and Pavol. After defeating the mercenaries, they beg for their lives and run away. Pavol suggests that they find an animal to feed the cursed coffee seed to see what happens. A chicken or a duck. In the village center, the two find a hen, and then they pulled out the demonic seed and fed it to the chicken, which immediately transforms after eating the seed. Matej is shocked and exclaims that the grain is accursed. They must find the priest and extract more information from him. Heading north into the forest, they don't find the priest, but they do run into the Jewish man, who explains that he's been kicked out of his house by a group of Hussites. And if Pavol wants his help, Pavol will have to kick the invaders out. Approaching the Hussites, they notice that there's too many of them for just Matej and Pavol to be able to take on in a fair fight. They'll have to get reinforcements first before attempting this fight. Exploring the forest to the north, Matej and Pavol see something they have never seen before, some form of weird monster. It looks like a giant tentacle with meaty arms and legs. Could this be what happens after you drink the demonic coffee? Matej and Pavol attack this creature, and it looks even weirder and uglier the closer you get. After a difficult fight, going back and forth with the creature multiple times, Matej and Pavol are able to injure it enough and eventually kill it. After the monster is put down, they enter the cave to the north and find a pile of human bones in different stages of decomposition. One body is roasted, and it also has the gold necklace that the Burg Master has been hunting down. This body must be Kajal, that Ida the thief told him about. With the necklace in hand, they make their way back to the Burg Master. They ask the man with the silly hat if he knew that the priest frequented the brothel. He said yes, they often ran into each other there, and Matej is predictably outraged. Moving on, they hand the man in the silly hat the golden necklace back. The Burg Master asks what do they want in return. Pavol replies, "This house." To which the Burg Master reluctantly agrees and gives Pavol the house keys, on the condition that the Burg Master is allowed to clear out tomorrow. Matej and Pavol return to the castle to ask Josef for reinforcements. They need help to clear out the Hussites from the Jewish man's house. Meeting back up with Josef, they update him on everything that they've recently learned, including how cursed coffee can turn people into monsters. They explain that the Jewish man knows more and is willing to tell them, but first they need help clearing out his home of the invading Hussites. Josef agrees and assigns them 2 men-at-arms to help them fight the Hussites off. With the extra muscle in tow, they return to the Jewish man's house, past the village and in the forest. After having fought the Beast of the Depths and having 2 men-at-arms as reinforcements, makes Pavol and Matej feel a lot better about this fight. After the fight, the 2 men-at-arms take their leave and return back to Josef. The Jewish man is overjoyed to be able to take his house back. Entering the house, the Jewish man says that he's happy that his prized possession remains unharmed. In the corner, they notice a hot air balloon being hung up from the ceiling. The man explains that he's looking for a fuel source that's lighter than wood and coal. Only then would he be able to make the balloon fly. Pavol asks the man what does he know about the cultist. He tells them that the cultists are congregating at the Lord's fortified mansion, Villa Electra, west of the village. He doesn't know how to infiltrate them. Pavol and Matej will have to be observant and find a way of how the cultists identify each other. The man also points out that the cultists appear to always wear purple cloaks when they attack. He also points out that the cultists may be identified by the fangs that they paint on their armor and helmets. Pavol asks how are they able to afford such ornate purple robes, to which the man replies they must have some sort of benefactor that's bankrolling their operation. Wrapping up the conversation, Pavol and Matej take their leave. After a long day of work, Matej and Pavol head to the local tavern to get some rest and some food. Pavol and Matej share a moment. Pavol confesses that he has found solace in their discourse. It distracts him from idle thoughts and makes him feel better to see the world teeming with activity. Matej also opens up. He confesses that all the activity and the adventure has been a very nice break for him and quite a difference from his usual meditative seclusion. Matej asks Pavol, why does he keep drinking so much? Pavol explains that after the Battle of Kosovo, he was captured by the Turks. He was held with a sword to his throat, and they were about to cleave his head for the Sultan's delight. At that moment, there was a thunderous blast, and he was able to disguise himself and escape in the confusion. Ever since then, he can still feel the cold sword to his neck, as if that sword still hangs over him. They enter the tavern. We see a cutscene. The courier that Josef dispatched has delivered the request for aid to Adam. Adam reads Joseph's report and his request for aid and realizes that he needs to head out right away. After a night of rest, Matej and Pavol wake up the next day to find out that it's raining. They make their way to their village. Pavol wants to claim the house from the Burg Master. Entering the village, they see the short man in the dark cloak again. That must be Valer. He was entering the Burg Master's house. But when they approach, they're stopped by a bodyguard that has painted fangs on his armor. Pavol demands that he step aside, but the enraged bodyguard resorts to violence. This was odd. Why did the Burg Master suddenly have bodyguards? And why did the bodyguards have the markings of the cultist? Was the Burg Master working with the cult? Defeating the bodyguards, they head inside. Once inside, Valer, the short man, says, "Hide Kwawa. We've been caught in the act." The Burg Master says, "Let us temper our spirits, gentlemen. He is but a cog in the wheels of distribution." Coffee they are dealing with is unprocessed and has no connection to the cult. Matej says that things would have progressed more smoothly if the Burg Master had offered up this information earlier. The Burg Master replies that he does not bend his knee to the Lord. He has stronger and more powerful allies to contend with. Pavol demands to know what does the Burg Master know about the coffee and the cult. The Burg Master confesses that their main source is a man known as Root. He sources caravans from Ethiopia that bring in the coffee. Valer and the Burg Master knew that dealing with the Root would be dangerous. so they always had a backup plan, and they were getting ready to escape the village. They knew that trouble would be coming one day, so they secretly started to amass an arsenal of weapons underneath this church. They asked other nobles for help, but Root is a very powerful man. Valer explains that they would have been more upfront about what was going on and what did they know, but they were suspicious that maybe Pavol and Matej, agents of Root, trying to find out what the Burg Master and Valer were up to. They explain that they've built up an arsenal of weapons underneath the church. The priests allowed them to store weapons there as long as they gave them half-price coffee. However, the priest disappeared yesterday. Valer explains that they need to leave the city with haste. The cult will soon be after them. They ask Matej and Pavol for help and protection to get out of the village, since they know that the cult will try to ambush them. Matej offers to go back to their lord to ask for reinforcement and men-at-arms, but they require a pledge of sincerity, so they take Valer with them as a hostage. They return to Josef, update him again, and ask for the help of some men-in-arms. Valer will be staying behind as a hostage to make sure that the Burg Master is being honest. Reinforced with 2 men-at-arms, Pavol and Matej make their way back to the Burg Master. And just as they expected, right as the Burg Master leaves the village, they are ambushed by cultists. Things must be getting serious. The cultists are bringing out more monsters and more of their human experiments. It's a difficult fight, but grit, determination, and a lot of alcohol helps our party overcome the challenge. The Burg Master thanks our heroes and pays them for their work. He says that him and his family are indebted to them. He says try locating the priest, he will lead you to our arsenal. And the Burg Master makes his way safely out of the village. Pavol and Matej head to the brothel to locate the priest. Pavol very diplomatically inquires about the key to the church arsenal. Surprisingly, the priest gives it up without resistance. Pavol and Matej head to the church's catacombs to investigate the church's arsenal now that they have the key. In the arsenal they find, well, weapons. Shields, halberds, crossbows, enough to supply a small militia. Wrapping up their business in the church, they start heading out of town, and on the way, they encounter an odd scene of Hussites giving forced baptisms. A cultist named Dick runs up to you and asks you to help free his friend, whose name is Weenie, from the Hussites. So I just want to emphasize here, these 2 cultists were named Dick and Weenie. Matej says that they should help him, and maybe being in their good graces, they'll be able to get an in with the cult, and that way they'll be able to learn more about this organization. Pavol approaches the scene and overhears the Hussites accusing the cult member of heresy. They are trying to carry out a perverted version of a baptism. But Weenie holds fast to his beliefs and says that he will never renounce Zervan. After some back and forth and trash talking, the Hussites attack. After defeating the Hussites and freeing Weenie, our heroes are able to talk the cultists into leading them back to their base. The guard at the base challenges them and asks them what is the password. Weenie says Kawa overhead, and they're allowed to enter. After Dick and Weenie explain the situation, the cultist supervisor says that if Pavol and Matej want to join the cult, they have to perform one task for them, and together they'll be able to drive the Hussites from the land. The cultist spies have heard that the Lord keeps a secret painting in his room that is highly prized, and it's a nude woman, such a sight the cultist supervisor has never seen. So basically, they're stealing their lord's pornography. Pavol agrees and says that they'll have it by nighttime. The cultist supervisor explains that the goal of the cult is to expel the Hussites from the lands, and after that, they'll be going after the nobility, and the powerful Lord Zorvan shall arrange all things. The cult supervisor also adds that it's Root who's financing the entire operation. The knight and the priest make their way back to the castle to talk to their liege lord and ask about the painting. The three men look at the painting and pause. Pavol, uncomfortably aroused, says, "Your artwork easily puts us in the mood like rabbits." And then he asks for any engravings of the painting that the Lord might have. Afterwards, Josef confesses that he's going to miss it and that this engraving and painting has brought him many moments of joy. I don't want to know more. He sends Pavlov off with the engraving and then asks Matej to stay behind so that they can play around the chess. Returning to the cult, Pavol shows him his nudie mag. An older cultist runs over and exclaims he's never seen anything like this, that it looks so real. The cultist supervisor says, "Calm yourself. First, he's going to go to that bush over there with the painting to inspect it." While he does that, Pavol may enter and talk to his cultist supervisors. Pavol talks to one of the cultists who is pacing back and forth in the hallway, that her dear mother frowned upon her when she left home, but when the cultists expelled the Hussites, even she shall embrace Zervan. Pavol heads upstairs to talk to the big cheese, the cultist in charge. Entering the office, Pavol encounters an extremely well-dressed man wearing elaborately decorated clothes and a cape. He asks Pavol why is he interested in the organization. Pavol explains that his wife recently left him and that he'd like to sell his soul to the devil for her return. Ignac asks Pavol about the holy man that he's been seen with. Pavol explains that the priest is secretly a heretic and he's on the run under threat of being burned alive due to his heresy. Ignac accepts the explanation, but says that he'll have to verify first. He says that he has a proposition. They are seeking a fugitive, a turncoat from their ranks. His name is Bodan. He has a tattoo of teeth on his ass. Ignac wants you to find him and then cut off the patch of skin where he has the tattoo. Ignac himself etched the tattoo, so he'll be able to detect any forgery. So he's asking you to go peel a man's butt to get a nice piece of ass skin. Bodan was last seen entering the church. He tells you to come back once you have that slice of skin, a nice piece of butt skin. Pavol asks the man if he pays his taxes and dues to the crown from his coffee business. Ignac replies that he'll slap Pavol so hard that he'll pass out if he asks him about taxes again. Ignac adds that you'll recognize Bodan because he's always hiding underneath a cloak, hiding his face. Pavol makes his way back to the castle and reports back to Matej and Josef. Josef is crying because he lost the chess match to Matej. Josef announces that he'll defeat Matej one day if he can only remember how a knight moves. Pavol reports back that he went among the cultists and talked to their leader, and confirms that someone named Root is financing the operation. Along with the alibi that he presented, that Pavol is looking to sell his soul to Satan, and Matej is a heretic priest. He also mentions Bodan, and how he's supposed to get a cut of the man's ass to prove his loyalty to the cult. Josef says excellent. They'll be able to lead an assault on them, but first they must find Bodan. So Pavol and Matej head off to the church. Fortunately, Bodan, hiding his face with a cloak, is very easy to spot. Bodan immediately figures out that Ignac has sent them. They apprehend the fugitive cultist and then get a nice piece of ass. Pavol tells Bodan to stay still, lest he mistakenly carve ye sack instead of his backside. Bodan says, "Ah." After carving out a piece of his ass, Pavol and Matej escort Bodan back to Lord Joseph's room and suggest, though Bodan is drained of blood, he might be a good chess sparring partner for Josef. Next, Pavol asks Bodan, "What did you do to get branded as a traitor to the cultist?" Bodan explains that it was his job to enchant or curse the grains of kawa, or coffee, within the castle that burnt down at the beginning of the game. They had conjured forth the Zervinus demon, Anrimon, and bound him in the catacombs of the building. Instead of a head, the infernal demon had an eternal flame that the cultists used to roast the coffee, giving the coffee supernatural properties and a demonic influence. The cultists' plan had been to poison the Hussite bandits in the area, but the Hussite leader caught wind of a plan, so he forbade all his Hussite raiders to take anything from the villagers. As a result, the villagers consumed the cursed coffee. During the ritual, Anrimon resisted being bound, requiring a constant chant during the roasting of the coffee. But on that fateful day, Bodan had tampered with the incantation, giving Anrimon a chance to free himself, which caused a fire that burnt down the castle. Bodan also adds that the Turk is the Root's right-hand man, and they're working together to import the coffee. Matej and Pavol also ask Bodan what does he know about the incantress Polly, Pavol's ex-wife. Bodan explains that she's a swift-witted maiden who very quickly learned the arcane rituals of the cult, and had proven herself a masterful conjurer even though she only just recently joined. Bodan adds that if they want to find out who Root is and who the cult is working with, they may want to try to steal Ignac's calendar, since he records all his upcoming meetings there, and they might get a hint about who he's working with. So our protagonists hatch a plan. Pavol and Matej would go undercover with the cult, pretending to be heretics, and turn in Bodan's buttskin to Ignac, and if things go wrong, Josef and his troops will be waiting outside of the cultist encampment, waiting for a sign, and when the sign is given, an archer will create a distraction by shooting an arrow through the window of the office, giving Matej and Pavol a chance to get the upper hand on the cultist. Having agreed on a plan, our cultist hunting team heads out. They return to speak to Ignac at the cult base. Pavol hands over the buttskin, saying that it's starting to smell. Ignac, satisfied with a piece of another man's ass, turns to Matej and starts asking him about his faith and heresy. Matej explains that his sister was once assaulted by a member of the clergy, and that turned him against the church and pushed him into heresy. Matej follows up that it's his goal to get revenge on the monastery, and he has studied other Catholic heretics. Ignac seems delighted. He explains that they're working with some of these heretics to import coffee from Ethiopia. Ignac says that's a very good story, and he reveals that they have spoken to Paula and they knew about Pavol and their investigation into the cult. They had investigated Matej and found out that he's a loyal and devoted priest. Realizing it's now or never, Matej gives the signal. They bar the door to prevent any more cultists from entering, but they still have to deal with the cultists inside the room already, including Ignac's bodyguard. After a short fight, Matej and Pavol are able to defend themselves and defeat the bodyguards. Realizing that he's about to be caught, Ignac takes some poison he had hidden to prevent himself from being caught. Matej and Pavol cut strips of Ignac's habit to fashion a rope to lower themselves out the window. They grab Ignac's calendar and escape the room. Outside of the cult base, they meet up with Josef, who had been hiding in the bushes. Pavol delivers the news that they had been betrayed by his ex-wife, but they had managed to get the calendar before escaping. In the calendar, they find a big note saying that Rot, or Root, is the Sultan's agent and the whole cult is just a game. Matej says that this reeks of political intrigue. They also find a note saying that he's meeting with Burr to get rid of Rot, Mar, and Powell. Matej deduces that Ignac was hatching a plan to betray Paula. Apparently there was infighting within the cult. Another note adds that they finally received their first independent shipment of coffee. And on the schedule for today, Friday, is a meeting with Rot and Mar in the tavern. Josef tells us to move quickly and make that meeting, so Matej and Pavol head to the tavern. Before entering the tavern, Matej reminds Pavol that he needs to stay sober during all of this. So Matej proposes switching outfits, since no one would expect a priest to be drinking. That way no one will think it's odd that Pavol doesn't drink alcohol. Matej adds that to play the part, Pavol will have to chide the disguised Matej about the evils of libations. So the two enter the tavern wearing each other's outfits. And the first thing Matej does is order some drinks. After speaking with a few of the locals at the tavern, they spot the man they're here to speak to. Matej greets the man, Salam Alaikum, and the man returns the greeting, Alaikum Salam. Matej orders drinks for them, and then asks, how is it that there's a Turkish man here, given the ongoing war? The Turkish man, known for speaking in rhymes, replies, the man talks about Jasmine, a plot against a harem, being buried alive? It's on screen if you want to read it. I can't help you here. But I think he got kicked out of his homeland, and the Hungarian king gave him permission to do business in his realm. Matej acts like he's blown away by this story. Matej asks if the man enjoys coffee. The Turkish man replies, Kawa, brought by caravan to the Turk, shall make thy wife not sad. What the hell does that mean? Matej pulls out the cursed coffee bean that they had picked up at the beginning of their adventure, and he asks the Turkish man if he's ever seen anything like this. At that point, a stranger in armor walks up to the Turk, interrupting the conversation. The stranger asks for a word with the Turkish man. The fangs on the stranger's armor suggest he's also with the cult. Matej challenges the stranger and points out that his armor reveals that he's in league with the cultist. Matej then proposes a duel. Everyone steps outside to witness the duel. Matej, playing the role of a knight, taunts the stranger in the cultist's armor. But Matej had no idea how severely outclassed he was, and the fight is over like right away. Matej is taken to a bed upstairs at the tavern to recover. Pavol, dressed as a priest, says that this might be a good thing, that the strange knight may not have been very talkative to another knight, but maybe he'll speak to a man of the cloth. So, in his disguise, Pavol strolls over to this newcomer. Pavol congratulates the mysterious knight for beating the crap out of his friend, and offers to buy the man a drink. The mysterious knight reveals his name to be Marek. He asks, what brought you to the tavern? Pavol says that he's seeking a wife that ran away. She goes by the name of Paula. He follows up explaining that he's of the Orthodox faith, so he's allowed to take a wife. Marek answers that he hasn't heard about her. Marek asks why would she flee, prompting Pavol to reveal a little bit more about his backstory. He says that he was in Kosovo as a military chaplain and nearly lost his life, and then for 2 years he drowned his sorrows in drinking. And one morning, after returning from the tavern, there was a letter on his pillow from his wife, declaring that she no longer feels like a woman by his side, and she hopes that he will find solace in God. Marek inquires what makes him think that she'll be here. Pavol explains that she used to frequent this tavern, and he also ran into her here yesterday. After finishing their drinks, Marek points out that the priest has a very high tolerance for alcohol. Pavol replies that they've had a lot of drinks at the monastery, and even fermentation is the handiwork of God. Pavol turns the question around on Marek and asks, what brought you here? Marek says that he's a wandering knight in the employ of a Turk known as the Root. He's a stranger to these lands, and he needed help finding merchants willing to buy his coffee beans. Cash, cash, money, money. Marek then says that he needs to excuse himself and retires for the night. One of the other patrons at the bar, a mercenary, congratulates the priest on his ability to hold his liquor. But Pavol asks for leave since he needs to go empty his bowels. Just a fun little fact about when I was playing through this game, at this point I kept walking around trying to find a bathroom until I realized there's no indoor plumbing in this era and the game intended for you to go outside. Stepping into the bushes and the trees behind the tavern, Pavol overhears a conversation between the Turkish man and Marek. The Turkish man asks, has the shipment arrived? How many mutants have you forged? Marek confirms that the shipment has arrived, and that 6 mutants have been created in the last week. Everything is going according to the plan. The Turkish man then asks if Ahriman has been brought under control at the old castle, that the burning of the castle has left everything in a state of agitation. The Burg Master has severed connections with them, and a knight of the Lord is investigating the burning of the castle. Marek answers that yes, Pauline's enchantment has bound Ahriman, although Pauline is warning that this bond may not last much longer, that the eternal flame holds a lot of power. Nevertheless, with the help of sorcery, they'll be able to penetrate the depths of the infernal blaze and shall no longer require Ahriman's service. Marek continues saying that everything is prepared and they'll strike when dawn breaks. Pauline has made it clear that only the removal of the knight is warranted. After the conversation is over, Pavol sneaks back into the tavern and heads upstairs to get some sleep. Pavol wakes up later in the night and senses something's amiss. The tavern is too quiet. The other tavern patrons have been slain, including the bartender. Pavol steps outside to find out that Matej has been kidnapped. Marek has mistaken Matej for Pavol since they swap garbs. As Marek and his goons depart, Paula makes an appearance. She recognizes Pavol wearing Matej's clothes. The two step inside to the tavern to speak. Pavol asks, why is she doing all this? What's compelling her to join the cult? Paula asks for forgiveness. She says that it was Root that introduced these hallucinations and compelled her to do all this. She swears upon her soul, and that she truly loves him, though Pavol does not believe her. She continues saying that she wants nothing but to be with him, and that in the morning they're going to free Matej. After stabbing Pavol, Paula steps outside. She makes her way behind the tavern to where the Turkish man and Marek were speaking. She encounters a cultist called Rotface. She explains that she was held up by an acquaintance and asks where have the others gone. Rotface replies that they've gone to the castle. Returning to the old castle, Paula encounters a couple of cultists, Matej, Ahriman, and Marek. Marek asks Paula what took her so long. Paula explains that she was kidnapped by Pavol, but she murdered him. Marek then says that surely she dallied there with her former husband, accusing her of betraying the cult. She replies telling Marek that he's the only one for her. Marek refutes her and says that she still loves her ex-husband, and that she's lying about killing him. She tries to explain that it's the priest in the knight's clothing, that they've kidnapped the wrong person because they swap outfits. Marek says that he doesn't trust a word she says, and that he's going to be the one to obtain immortality through merging with Angra Mainyu. He tells his men to seize Paula. Although Marek might control the cultists, Paula says that she still controls Ahriman. She takes control of the demon and a fight starts. At first, the fight appears to go well, since Paula has Ahriman's help, and he's a powerful otherworldly demon. But it's not long into the fight that Marek is able to wrestle control of Ahriman back from Paula, leaving Paula overwhelmed and outnumbered. And the fight doesn't last too much long after that. But Paula is able to run away before she's captured. Meanwhile, Pavol has a crazy dream. Pavol, still dressed as Matej, wake up to find out that Adam has arrived. Adam is the inquisitor and noble that Josef sent a request for aid to at the beginning of our story. Adam asks what happened, why is he covered in blood? He asks what happened here. Pavol says that he's not 100% sure, but then catches Adam up on everything that's happened so far. Stepping outside, Adam asks Pavol about the flaming sword. Pavol says that he got it from an angel, and the angel said that with fire he shall rise into the heavens. After that, Adam and Pavol head back to the castle. But at the gate, they find a note from the cultist that says that they're holding the monk Matej in the barn beyond the castle, to come at dawn to negotiate his ransom, and if they try anything, they'll end the monk's life. Adam steps inside the castle and, using his rank, recruits some more soldiers to their group. They make their way to the rendezvous location to try to save Matej's life. Stepping inside a barn, Pavol demands that the cultists immediately release Matej, and a fight starts. After some judicious application of violence, the group is able to free Matej from the cultist. After being rescued, Matej promises to never drink again. The group takes this moment to update Adam on everything they discover so far, and also to switch back to their regular clothes. The group debates what options do they have to be able to infiltrate the old burnt-down castle. Matej mentions that if they had the power of flight, they could enter through the collapsed roof, which made him think about the Jewish man's balloon. But at that moment, a soldier arrives and delivers the news that the cultists have attacked the village. So the group is going to fight their way to the village to arrive at the Jewish man's house. We see a cutscene of Marek and the cultists surrounding the Turkish man. The group makes their way to the fight at the village. Approaching the town, a villager says that the cultists have set the village ablaze. The villager explains that the Jewish man is likely at the church, where the entire village is making a stand. Approaching the town, our heroes see Marek and his goons. Marek walks away, while his soldiers try to slow down our group. But like the other encounter with the cultists, Pavol, Adam, and Matej are very easily able to cut them down before long. Entering the village, they see that the house Pavol had just gotten from the Burg Master is on fire. Our group then rescues a mercenary from the cultist. In gratitude, the mercenary joins the party and lends his sword to our efforts. Fighting past one more group of cultists, our group is able to reach the church. At the church, they find the remaining villagers holed up and hoping for help. They also find the Jewish man, and they explain that they need his flying balloon. And as fuel to heat up the air, they'll be able to use the flaming sword Pavol has been granted by an angel. The group then escorts the Jewish man back to his home, and then they take flight using the burning sword and the balloon. With some luck and ingenuity, they're able to land the balloon in the middle of the collapsed roof of the old burnt castle. Though Adam didn't do too well on the flight, given his severe vertigo and fear of heights. Entering the castle, the group finds the burnt remains of the cultists burnt in the hellfire. Entering the main chamber, they find the demon Ahriman. Pavol tells the demon to return from where he came. The demon says that he cannot return to his place of origin. He offers Pavol a deal. If Pavol releases the demon will spare Pavol's life and will devastate the Turkish kingdom in revenge. Pavol turns down the deal with the Hellspawn, and Ahriman attacks. Ahriman will be the most formidable threat our heroes have encountered so far. In his opening move, he uses murder, which takes out Pavol in one hit. And Ahriman's armor is so thick that regular attacks barely do any damage. So Adam uses his pistol, which does break through the armor and also applies the bleeding status effect. Pavol will use the burning sword to apply a lot of damage and then also apply the burning status effect. So now that Ahriman has both the burning and the bleeding status effect draining his health every turn, it's not long before the fight is over and Ahriman goes down. Pavol picks up Ahriman's dropped sword and comments that he now has 2 fiery blades. Though Matej interjects and says, "Don't use Ahriman's sword, it's surely cursed." Pavol comments that it will at least be able to power the balloon. Matej notices an engraving on the wall that seems to depict some form of sacrificial rite, where a tentacle is attached to a statue. The mercenary adds that he's seen that statue underneath the church. Pavol points out that the image in the engraving resembles Jansi, and they still have his body in the ice room in the castle. Using the balloon, our group exits the castle. Back at the tavern, Adam mentions that he hopes he never flies again. Then they return to the castle to perform an autopsy on Jansi's body. They were able to acquire a tentacle that had grown inside of the body. Equipped with the tentacle, they return to the church catacombs and locate the statue depicted in the engraving. The statue moves to the side, revealing a passage deeper underground. Continuing their descent underground, they find their passage blocked by a mutant capable of summoning mutated eyeballs to his side. By using the burning sword and all of their other weapons and all the tricks they've learned so far, they're able to best the mutant in combat. After the fight, our heroes continue their descent underground. Our cult hunting group enters into a large room where they see a beast from the depths. Going off to one of the sides, they find a cultist hiding. He says only a few cultists and some mutants remain with Marek, and he's regretful that he ever let himself be talked into worshipping Zorvin. Our group continues making their way into the tunnel, dodging the mutants, and having to fight their way past some more guards. Eventually entering a room that opens up, and they find that the cultists have summoned some creature here. A creature that appears as a massive gaping maw. A guard warns the cultist to run and let Marek know that there are intruders. The cultist then takes off, running into the giant mouth. Defeating the guards, our party follows. Exiting the other side, the party is jumped by mutants, but they're able to defend themselves and dispatch of all the mutants. They find themselves in an area called the Meat Dungeon. our heroes find themselves in some otherworldly place, tinted with a green hue, and the walls and the floor composed of what appears to be wriggled organic matter, similar to the flesh of the mutants, a dungeon made of alien meat. They find what appears to be a shelter. Approaching it, they speak to a disillusioned cultist, asking who is he guarding. He doesn't know, he says some bloody fool, and that he doesn't care anymore, so he lets you through. Entering the flesh igloo, they find the Turkish man from before, the guy that likes to speak in rhymes. The Turkish man says that he's been sitting there for 8 hours. He says that his name is Hassan Bey. He's an agent of the Sultan, Murad II. He was dispatched as a spy with nefarious purposes, trying to incite unrest and rebellion. But it had all spiraled out of control. He was surprised with how deep the connections the cult had in Armenia were, and he didn't anticipate that they would be able to start their own route. The cult had received a secret verse for the rituals needed to summon Anraman. Though in time, through a leak, the cult was able to find out what their original purpose was. And eventually, the cult didn't need the Turkish man's connections anymore, since they had started importing their own coffee. The Turkish man also adds that Marek intends to feed him the cursed coffee, turn him into a mutant, and then present the Sultan his limbs. He asks for your help and says that Turkey will reward you generously. Our party continues down the meat locker and comes to a series of feet protruding out of the ground. One set of feet are still moving. These people are being fed to the meat keep. After approaching the still moving legs, they pull him out. It's Ferry, Josef's missing knight. He's confused and has no sense of how long he's been there. Having saved Ferry, they continue deeper into the meat dungeon. Walking on a floor that appears to be a mass of flesh, they reach the center of the dungeon and enter the keep. At the center, they find Marek standing behind a giant open pit of flames. He appears changed. Pavol tells Marek to surrender, the cult is crumbling, and that they'll get him in the end. Marek says that Angra Mainyu within him sees everything and reads all like through glass. He understands everything now. He taunts Matej and Pavol and tells them to watch at how he can tear Ferry apart. Marek asks why we've come here. He's already become an immortal demon. Though, Pavol suggests that even if he's immortal, they can still trash and beat him. The fight starts as the two cultists that flank Marek turn into mutants. As the fight starts, Pavol uses the fiery sword on Marek, trying to set him on fire, while the rest of the party uses any sticks of dynamite that they had left. Eventually, our heroes take down the mutants, leaving the possessed Marek by himself. But eventually, the possessed knight falls to the power of the fiery sword. Marek's half-burnt body is dragged back to the center of the village, so that everyone can see the demon being tortured with the fiery sword. Even though his top half has been burnt away, Marek can still yell and beg for the sword to be taken out. But the villagers aren't in the mood for mercy since they all lost someone to the cultist attack. But what about Paula? She'd been involved with the cult too. Very quickly, the villagers start calling for her blood and for her to also be burnt, calling her a witch and that she's to be executed. But Pavol rushes to her side. Calls for calm are ignored as the villagers are out for blood. And then calls for Paula's head start to gain momentum. The horny priest intervenes and says that enough blood has been spilt. The cult is finished, no need to take any more life. But ultimately, it's Pavol's decision. And Pavol is like, no, you're not decapitating my wife. He says that he can forgive whomever he chooses, grabs her by the hand, and walks away with her. One villager does try to stop Pavol. He just slaps the man down. And then the knight and his ex-wife, or maybe future wife again, who knows, walk off into the sunset. A bit further down the road, Pavol turns to Paula and asks, "Do you still love me?" She says she doesn't know, probably not. She suggests that they return to the villagers and that she needs to pay penance for what she's done, and she deserves death. Pavol says no, he can't do that. In spite of everything she's done, he can't bring himself to do that to her. Paula says that she doesn't know what to say to him. Pavol says to follow him, he's gonna show her something. The next day, Adam and Matej return to the meat keep to perform the mass, and they spread holy water around, and they manage to turn off the burning heart of the meat keep forever. A week later, Matej said goodbye and returned home. Inquisitor Adam was put in charge of the local castle, but after a year, he yearned for his home and left the castle in the care of the brave knight Dusi. The Burg Master, along with Valer, were able to use their contacts in Ethiopia and continue their trade, bringing wealth to the area. Felvidek flourished, and after years, Felvidek was spoken of as the most sober land far and wide. The horny priest even submitted a request to the Vatican for permission to perform mass using coffee instead of wine. It's not known exactly what happened to Pavol. The only thing that's known is that he once again joined the struggle against the Ottomans in the Balkans. And with that, we've come to the end of the story of Felvidek, as Matej and Adam look at a hot air balloon fly by. I'd like to thank you very much for spending this time with me. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I'd like to thank all the supporters of the channel. I appreciate your comments, likes, and your views. And also a big shout out to the members of the channel. I appreciate your support. But that's all for today. Thank you very much. Take care, and later.